That's me, folks.
And he's going to start us off with an intro to himself and his books.
Well, my name is Douglas Skelton, and I'm an alcoholic. No, I'm not. My name is Douglas Skelton, and I am. I started writing true crime and Scottish history, moved into fiction with the David McCall books and the Dominic Quest books. Now writing the Rebecca Connolly series, which started with Thunder Bay. I have that over here, but I don't think you can see it actually because it's out of frame. And the third one, which I do happen to have here, A Rattle of Bones, is now out. And it's jolly good, even if I say so myself. I might as well say it because other people might know it.
I like Rebecca Connolly. She's really good.
Yeah, she's, you know, she's kind of hard for me to write because I don't know if you've noticed, because I'm not a 20-something woman. And so I've got to be careful. You don't want to, as a sort of middle-age-ish, let's say, man, you could easily fall into the traps that so many authors have fallen into in writing female characters, and I'm very, very careful not to do anything stupid like that. And I have to say, I've seen female authors do kind of similar things about men and not got the right idea at all. But yeah, I like Rebecca. She's very complex. She has her demons, as all of my characters seem to have, and yet I am such a bright and bouncy personality, as everybody will tell you. And but she has her demons. She has things that she struggles with, but she's getting through them, particularly in this third book.
So, in the first one, she goes off to kind of a made-up Scottish island, doesn't she?
Yeah. The island of Sturm, which is spelled Stoyrm. And I had to make it up because of the events that I had on that island. If I'd set it in a real island, the community would have been coming after me with pitchforks and torches. They just wouldn't have been happy with the things that I was saying. I also wanted to control everything about it. I wanted to control the environment. I wanted to control the landscape, the mythology, the history. I wanted to be able to just keep possession of that and fit it into the storyline. And if I'd used a real island, like say Mull or Skye, I would have been kind of hamstrung a bit with the reality, and I really didn't want that to happen. But that said, the island is an amalgam of all different places, various islands. There's bits of Skye, there's bits of Mull, there's bits of Gia, where one part of my family comes from. There's bits of Arran, and there's also bits of the mainland. I lifted a mountain from Perthshire called Schiehallion, and it's a mountain I'm very fond of. We meet each other at night when nobody's looking, but it is a mountain that I'm very fond of, and I lifted that and I've placed it onto the island of Sturm. So it's really just like magpie-like of taking bits from here and there and creating this island. So Rebecca goes there following up a story. This is in Thunder Bay. The book is called Thunder Bay. And but she has other reasons to go to the island because her family originated there, and her father left there as a teenager, but never spoke about it to her and never returned, and she wants to find out why.
We've already got questions rolling in. So Steve said hello.
Hello, Steve.
Patsy wants to know how easy you find it to write women. Do you ever help?
It's hard to say. They're characters. They are characters that I make up. And as long as I don't fall into the trap of having, a woman admiring herself in the mirror, I think in a lot of ways we're all the same, and in a lot of ways we all think the same, whether you're a man or a woman or whatever you identify with. And in a lot of ways we're all alike, and I try to hang on to that, but with various subtle differences. It's as easy and as difficult as I make it. I think. And some of the male characters are difficult to write. Davy McCall, for instance, in my first series was difficult to write because he was so taciturn. He didn't say anything. Everything about Davy McCall was internalized. So the reader knew more about him than some of the other characters in the book. And I like to write dialogue. I like dialogue. So it was very difficult for me to write Davy McCall. But Rebecca, yeah, there are difficulties with Rebecca. I think it's because of her demons, and there's a lot of depth to Rebecca. Even though she's in her mid-20s, she's gone through a lot, even up to before Thunder Bay begins. And then I've piled more onto her in the next books, and she's coping with it. And I like to think she's a very, very strong character, despite her darkness. And she's very quick. She's very intelligent, just like me. She's actually good looking, especially like me. I do like Rebecca, but is she difficult to write? Yeah, she can be. She can be.
What whiskey are you drinking tonight?
It's Iron Brew. I don't want to think. No, it's whiskey. It's actually Jack Daniels.
So you're going to give me like a really sort of fancy Scottish?
No, that was just what was open. I do have some fancy Scottish stuff there, but that's what was open. I thought I'll go with that. But don't tell anybody it's Iron Brew. If anybody asks it's Iron Brew, don't tell them.
It's not orange enough for Iron Brew.
No, that's true.
Patsy says she loved Davy. He was a deep character. She liked the silence he brought.
Yeah, he was pretty deep. I mean, I'm not deep. I've got unexplored shallows. But Davy, I like David. I'd like to go back to his world without any spoilers about what happened in the last book, but I would like to go back to his world. And anybody who has read The Blood is Still, which is the second Rebecca Connolly, may well recognise a character who pops up in one chapter in a bar in Inverness and who has an exchange with Rebecca. I'm saying no more, but they may well recognise that character.
So tell us more about Rattle of Bones and the premise.
A Rattle of Bones, third in the series, and it begins in 1752 on a small hill above Ballachulish in the Scottish Islands, where a man had been executed some time before, and his remains are due to be taken down, and there's a young soldier standing guard on the body. And a woman comes and says that the rattle of bones that you hear when the wind goes through it will be heard through the ages whenever there's a miscarriage. That man was James Stewart, James of the Glens, and that's a true, that's a true life story. He was accused and convicted of a murder he didn't commit, and was quite horribly executed on that hillock. There's a memorial there to this day to it. And jump forward to the modern day, and another James Stewart has been convicted of a murder he may well not have committed. Rebecca is drawn into the story because she is a reporter. She works for a news agency now. She sees there's a story here because banners have appeared at the memorial to James of the Glens and at his gravesite, and she is following up the story, but at the same time she's under threat herself, because a man has taken exception to a story that appeared in the Nationals, a court story that came from her agency, but she didn't write, that named his son. And he's taken exception to this, and he's more or less threatened to her. And throughout the book, he stalks her. But he's being pushed on and manipulated by Mo Burke, who was in the second book, The Blood is Still, and who has a beef of her own against Rebecca that she wants payback.
And good news for Steve, did you not say the rights have just sold in the USA?
Yeah, that seems to have happened today, that the rights for this one and the first two are also available in the USA. So hopefully that'll be hitting American bookstores, I think, sometime next year, probably the latter end of next year now.
Steve has said he likes the characters in Thunder Bay. They're so fully realised. One of the things he loved about the story is it felt as if he could travel there and visit with them.
Thank you, Steve. And the check is in the post. Thank you very much for that. Just don't cash it too quickly.
He probably needs a check. He's spending big in our Steve, he's spilling up on all the signed books he wants.
Yeah, I mean, again, there are the important things, particularly in crime fiction, is plot. Plot is important, but character is equally as important. And I also believe that setting is important. I think you need to establish your backdrop very, very carefully, and it almost has to become another character in the piece. Whether or not it's a real place doesn't matter. And I take my cue from Ed McBain, who's one of my writing heroes, and he created a city called Isola, which is kind of based on New York, a wee bit of Boston, I think even a wee bit of LA, but I'm not so certain about that. But over the period of the 87th Precinct books, you really believed that this city existed. And it didn't. It all came out of Ed McBain or Evan Hunter's imagination. And that's what I wanted to do with Thunder Bay. And in A Rattle of Bones, we go back to Stirham. Rebecca doesn't, but her friends Chaz and Alan do. And oh, sorry, do you know that's not a Rattle of Bones? That's the next one. This is what happens. You write books so far in advance, and you're talking a book that's just come out, while you've just written the one that's going to come out next year, which at the moment is called Where Demons Hide. And in that, Chaz and Alan go back to Stirham, and they find a story over there. Rebecca doesn't go back in the book, but she's obviously in contact with them. So I'm going back to Thunder Bay and certain other things. And a couple of wee threads from Thunder Bay are tied up in that as well.
I think it's something you did really well. I sort of wrote in my review of Thunder Bay that I thought like the island itself was almost like a character.
Yeah, it should be. It should be, and it has to come alive. I firmly believe that if your backdrop doesn't come to life, your story won't come to life. If the reader doesn't believe in the setting, whether it's fictional or not, then your story will founder. I've read so many books. I'm not going to name any, but I've read so many books that are set in various places, and because they don't bring the setting to life, the book doesn't come to life for me. That's just me. I mean, other people, think differently, but that's my view, and I try to do that in anything that I write, try and create these convincing backdrops.
Well, you and Ellie Griffiths are the only people who've absolutely tricked me about something in your book.
Oh, right. Okay.
I actually Googled the island to see where it was. Because I thought it was real.
Did you not read the author's note at the end?
Evidently not.
Well, that's good. I'm glad of that. That's a good thing. That if somebody does believe it to such an extent that they go and look to see where it is, that pleases me.
And with Ellie Griffiths, don't know if you've ever read her Postscript Murders, but she made up a Victorian Gothic tale.
All right.
And I loved it. And I was like, that's so good, that Victorian.
Well, it's like Graham.
Why have I not read him?
Yeah, it's like Graham McRae Burnett with his bloody project, isn't it? Because so many people believe that is an actual case that he has outlined, and it's not. He just made it up. But he does it so well and so convincingly that people come away thinking, "Oh, that's a true crime book," and it's not. It's fiction. It's great. If anybody hasn't read it, I do recommend it.
Steve said he Googled it as well. So I don't feel like alone. In my because I'm just going back to see who's asked some of the questions. Mm-hmm. We've got, how long does it take to write your book?
How long is a piece of string? It really varies. Sometimes it just flows. The first Dominic Quest book, The Dead Don't Bookie, I think I wrote in really, really fast, and that includes stopping around about the 40 to 50,000 word mark to think of a story. And I mean that. That's true. What I was doing with the Dead Don't Boogie is I was coming off the back of the Davy McCall books, which, although there was humour in them, they were quite dark overall. And I thought, I want to write something that's just a romp, that's just something that's really light with darkness in it, because it is a thriller. And I was using Raymond Chandler's adage that if you feel your story is slowing down, have two guys kick the door in with guns in their hand. And that's the way I approached the first Dominic Quest book. In fact, I do have guys kicking the door in with guns in their hand. And I'd got to about 50,000 words, and I was throwing all these set pieces in, and chases and this and fights and this, that and the other plot. I'm going to say plot twists because I didn't actually have a plot. And I stopped and I said, I need to think what this is all about. I've got Dominic Quest with this young woman. I've got all these disparate characters trying to get to this young woman. And I've no idea why. So I had to stop, take the dogs out for a walk. I had more than one dog at that time. And try and think. And I think it took me a day or two to come up with a plot line. And then I could carry on and then go back at the next draft and retrofit what I'd already written to fit the plot line that I'd come up with. And even the title, at that time it was just called Quest, after Dominic Quest, the protagonist. And it was during a conversation with a writer friend, Michael J. Malone. And I said, I want to call a book The Dead Don't Boogie. And it dawned on me while I was talking to him, I am actually writing a book called The Dead Don't Boogie. So I managed to work that in as well. So that was written actually very, very fast. I think about 8 weeks to do that. The Rebeccas can take a bit longer because they're a bit more lyrical. They're not as fast moving as the Dead Don't Boogie. I don't have men kicking the door in with guns in their hand because it doesn't fit the world that I've created. So they take me just a wee bit longer. But it's difficult to say. I would say first draft, on average, about 3 months. And then after that, it's just a matter of honing. So maybe it could take between 4 and 6 months for the average book.
Caro Ramsey wants to know if you prefer...
You let anybody in here, don't you?
She wants to know if you prefer writing books or plays. She's talking about Carry On Sleuthing. Carry On Sleuthing, do you know, it's great to write a Carry On Sleuthing. I dread moving on to them, but whenever I start writing them, I just have so much fun because I just let everything go, as it were. And as you can see, I've let a lot go, but I just let everything go and just have a lot of fun with it. And just to explain, people won't know what it is. Carry On Sleuthing is they are plays that we read from the script, and we've performed. There's 3 of them, and we've performed them at various venues, and they're mystery, comedy mysteries. And Caro herself plays the protagonist, Letitia Lovibod, who is our detective. And we've had, what was the first one called? I think Death in the Ocean Wave was the first one. Murder at the Nickeridge was the second one. And I can't remember the name of the third one. Caro will probably remember. And they're a lot of fun. Which do I prefer? Oh, books. I make more money out of them. What part do you play in the plays?
Various parts. I essay a number of roles in the performance, as does Michael J. Malone, the aforementioned Michael J. Malone, and Teresa Talbot, who's other writer. We've had Alex Gray involved. I think we've also had Lynn Anderson involved at some point. And Neil Broadfoot have all taken parts. Gordon Brown and Neil have been the 2 halves of a pantomime horse. And I do believe it was the pinnacle of their career. I don't know which of them was the rear end. I can hazard a guess, but how many characters have I played? I think the
the most popular one I've done is Farquhar the butler, and he keeps popping up, and he's a doddery old character. So it's typecasting really, and Caro does Letitia Lovibond. Michael trots out his vast array of accents, which is quite impressive when you hear them. So, but they're great fun. They're great fun, and we hope. I mean, I really do hope we can get back to doing them again pretty soon, once all this panic and furore is over.
So you do the plays fair, you write the books, and you're one of the four blokes. How did that come about?
The Four Blokes came about with a conversation with Mark Leggett, and we were at a Crimewriters Association Christmas lunch in Edinburgh. And Mark took me aside. He said, "I'd really like to go on tour with some writers on a panel." And Neil Broadfoot was there. So I said, "Well, Neil's here." We brought him in, and then Gordon Brown was there. So it ended up with the four of us. And I think at that time, what was it called? I can't remember what it was called. It wasn't Four Blokes. And really, it was just the four of us. And we had a chairperson, Peter Burnett, and he asked us questions, and the audience asked us questions about the books and about crime writing in general. And we kept it as bright and breezy as we could. But then we did an online event for the Saltire Society. First time we were with a number of authors, and through the day, we created a crime story. We each had, I think, originally it's like 10, 15 minutes to write and add to this story. And there was about 10 or 15 writers. And it was up to Craig Robertson on that occasion at the end to finish it off. And he did a very good job considering what had gone before. But the following year, it was just the four of us, Gordon, Neil, Mark, and myself, for the Saltire Society. And we did the same, except over the day, and we created this story. But off screen, as it were, we were fooling about. So we would put on hats, and we would do all sorts of things that the people couldn't see. I think it was on Facebook or YouTube or somewhere like that. They couldn't see what we were doing, but we were having fun while somebody was writing, and we were answering questions as well. And we had a discussion afterwards, and we thought, do you know, this might actually work. Crime Factor, that was what we called it before, if we changed Crime Factor. So we started to do Four Blokes in Search of a Plot, in which the audience gives us, and we've done it for the UK Crime Book Club, as you know, a couple of times, I think, gives us a protagonist, a murder weapon, and we take turns to create this story. Now, it might start off seriously, but it certainly doesn't end up seriously. The whole thing is a bit of fun, and it is great fun. It's great fun to do, and that's another thing that I'd like to get back to doing. It's great digitally, but live you have this connection with the audience, and there's a lot more going on in the live show, and let's hope we can get back to doing that as well.
Do you have any ideas when you might get back to being live?
I think for Four Blokes and Carry On Sleuthing, it'll be next year. I can't see it being this year.
Are you going to bloody Scotland? I'm
chairing a panel on the Friday night in bloody Scotland, a police procedural panel, but that's all I'm doing this year. It's their loss.
So, what are you writing now? One of Sam's favourite new questions is to ask, what's the scene you've written most recently?
Well, I've just finished. I've just finished the fourth Rebecca. So I would imagine the scene I finished most recently is the ending of that, which I'm not going to give away. No matter how much you offer me. Well, actually, that's not true. If you offer me some money, I might. But what have I written recently? I've been doing some promotion stuff, if this counts, actually, for a Rattle of Bones. And on my website, I've serialised a true crime story from the early 20th century in Glasgow, which was a miscarriage of justice, because there's a miscarriage of justice in the Rattle of Bones. And we actually, referred to this case, the Oscar Slater case, in the book. So I think possibly, to be accurate, that was the last thing I did, because I put the final part of that onto my website today. Does that count?
Yeah, we'll let that count. What made you go and research all the old kind of?
That's how I started. I was a journalist to trade, and I started doing some freelance features for the Evening Times in Glasgow on old crimes in Glasgow. And it began with the Bible John case, which is a notorious case in Glasgow. It's a series of unsolved murders which may or may not have been committed by the same person. And I did that and the Peter Manuel case, which is another notorious case. And from there, I moved into. I then moved on to writing my first non-fiction book, which was Blood on the Thistle, which was a compendium of 20th century, a case book of 20th century murder cases. And I did, I think, 10, maybe 11 true crime and Scottish criminal history books after that. So I've always had this interest, and I've always done this, and I have this wealth of material sitting, because most of those books, I have the rights back to them. So I have this wealth of material sitting that I can access and say, right, well, I'll rewrite that, I'll redo that, and I'll put that out. I stopped doing the non-fiction with Glasgow's Black Heart, which was the history of Glasgow's underworld from the 1800s onwards, and moved into fiction then. And I discovered that getting into fiction was a lot harder than getting into non-fiction for some reason. It took me about 3 or 4 years to get Blood City, the first Davy McCall book, published.
Is that when you made Rebecca a journalist?
Yeah, there's the old adage about write what you know, and I can still barely remember being a journalist. And I also wanted to set it in a, again, it's the world building. And she's not with a national newspaper when she starts. She's with a weekly newspaper, which is where I worked, apart from on a freelance basis. So I kind of knew that. I also want to explore how that world had changed. And a lot of people probably don't realise just how much that world has changed. And Rebecca, although she's new to the job, or newish to the job, keeps kicking against the way that the industry has gone. And she just feels that it's the wrong way to go about things. And in that way, she mirrors my views. So all of that is in there. So it is basically write what you know. And I never wanted to write about police officers. I do have police officers in my stories, but when I started writing fiction, I took the decision not to do police procedurals, because there were so many people doing them and doing them well, and I couldn't better that, and I couldn't add anything to it. So when I started the fiction, I thought, what can I do? So I took it from the point of view of the criminal, which is Davy McCall. And now I'm doing the journalist. Now, the journalist is not an unknown character in crime fiction by any means, but I don't know of any books that deal with a journalist in weekly newspapers. And certainly don't know of any that work in the Highlands and Islands. Could be wrong. Sure, somebody will say, but they're such and such, and that's fine.
Steve Munoz is asking all the questions I did.
He's awful chatty, isn't he?
He said, is that a Blade Runner print behind you?
It is a Blade Runner print behind me. Before we came on, I was actually showing Caroline the various film posters around the room, and although I realised it's not that the poster isn't squint. If anybody thinks that's squint, it's not. It's you that's squint. I'm sorry to say. You must be sitting at an angle.
You do. Am I right in thinking that you're sort of quite into film music?
What makes you think? Yes, yeah, hugely into film music. In fact, I do a weekly show on hospital radio in Glasgow, Saturday afternoons at 4 p.m. And you can hear it on southernsound.org.uk. And it's devoted to film music. I've loved film music since I was a boy, and I've got quite a big library now. I've been collecting it for quite a while. And in fact, Dominic Quest, one of the things about Dominic Quest is that he's a film music fan, and there's a lot of me in Dominic Quest, and I just love it, and I use it in the writing. So whenever I'm writing, I will carefully select what film music I'm going to listen to fit
the mood of what I'm writing or that particular chapter in itself. It just helps me.
Is that a thing you'd ever consider sort of putting out, like your playlist that goes with your book?
Yeah, I did it actually with I think it was the first Davy McCall. I put out a playlist on social media and here and there, because there was a lot of music mentioned in that, because it was set in 1980. So again, I used the music to help set the scene within the text. And I stuck out a wee playlist of the various tracks that are mentioned in the book. So that would be, when would that be? 2013, I think I did that. And I do mention, whenever I do a blog sometimes, or at least once a year, the tracks that I've listened to while writing that particular book. For Thunder Bay, I was listening to some of the darker John Williams stuff, like Dracula and The Fury, but also some classical music, by Shostakovich, The Isle of the Dead suite, because it was really dark and I needed that feeling. For The Blood Is Still, I turned to the music for Outlander by Bear McCreary, and I had a lot of that playing. And same with A Rattle of Bones, because of the time period as well, because Outlander is set during the Jacobite Rising of 1745 and beyond. So The Blood Is Still harks back to that, and so does A Rattle of Bones. So I used that. But also, there's some great music in Outlander. Bear McCreary is probably one of the best composers working out there today.
So what is your favourite piece of film music?
Oh, it's difficult to say. I have favourite composers. Whenever I'm asked, my favourite composer is a man called Jerry Goldsmith, who is a name that most people wouldn't know. But if I say he wrote the music to The Omen and the theme to the first Star Trek movie, which was then used for The Next Generation, and so many others. And if you played them, you'd say, "Oh, I know that." And it's the same with a lot of film music. You might not, you'll know John Williams, but you might not know some of the other composers' names, but you'll know their work. And I still say that everybody will have a bit of film music that they like. I don't care what kind of music that they like, but there will be a bit of film music that they like, because it's such a wide genre and takes in so many different styles.
Steve has said that he loves film music here as well. He was listening to Oliver Arnold's while reading Thunder Bay.
Sorry, what was that when I didn't hear that?
He said he was listening to Oliver Arnold's while reading Thunder Bay.
Oh, right, okay.
Contemplative moods and the island's atmosphere.
I like Steve. That's another check. Hang on until I write that down.
We all like Steve. He also said you should have put a book in the auction.
Yeah, I didn't know about the auction. With social media for a while, I've just been dipping in and out, and just doing what I had to do and then come away, because I was writing the fourth Rebecca and doing some other stuff, and I didn't know about the auction until after it was almost over.
But
next time,
Scott, I don't think there's going to be a next time.
Oh, well, okay.
It's a lot of work. It's gone really well. We've raised, I think we're at £3,200 at the moment.
Oh, that's good. That's good. That's great.
To go.
Yeah.
But
so it's still going?
Yeah, we've got about 3 days left.
Okay. Well, so is there still time to put a book in?
I think we may be full up of books.
Okay. Right.
But
stick well, as we say in Glasgow.
But my dad is the person to ask.
Okay.
Because he's been organising it. Tony Millington reckons there's a new film and sci-fi museum that you might like in Milton Keynes if you want to travel that far down south.
Milton Keynes.
I know.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah. I've never even been to the Museum of the Moving Image. Is that in London? I've never even been to that. I've not been to London for years, and I really should go back.
I haven't. There's a film and media museum really near where I live. I have been to.
And you have been to it, and is it good?
It's all right, yeah. It has all the a load of the old original sort of toys from Play School.
All right.
I think this is a quote from Caro. It says, "You miss everything, old man."
Who is this Carol?
I'm gonna have a look and just check a bit. So you said you had the rights back to.
Yeah, to a lot of the non-fiction, I've got the rights. The rights are in my possession.
Are you planning to put them back out?
It would be good to put them back out. I need to work on them again because I'm never satisfied with anything that I write. And I remember dipping into my first book, The Blood is the Blood and the Thistle, and thinking, "Oh my God, this is awful." So I would always need to go through it. But yeah, who knows? Maybe at some point it would be nice to get them back out there. I mean, there are some of them that I'm particularly proud of. Some of them I'm not. One of them I'm not, in fact. But there are some that I'm particularly proud of. I like Glasgow's Black Heart, which I mentioned before. I like Dark Heart, which is the story of the Edinburgh's toll booth, which was the town jail. And I'm particularly proud of Indian Peter, which is an incredible true life story, true life adventure story about a man that was abducted as a teenager and sold into indentured servitude in the American colonies. Was captured by Native Americans, escaped, joined the militia, went to war against the French and their Indian allies, was captured, made a prisoner of war, was exchanged and dumped on the south coast of England, and walked all the way back home to Aberdeen, telling his story along the way to pay for food. And then had a book published in New York about his adventures, took that to Aberdeen, and was arrested when he was selling it on the streets of Aberdeen because he was implicating some very, very powerful men in this abduction trade for the indentured servants. And he was thrown into jail. His book was burnt in public by the public hangman. And then he was run out of town. He went to Edinburgh, started something like a 2-decade legal fight against these powerful men, and in the meantime became a publican, a publisher. He set up the Edinburgh's first penny post. He set up the first street directory in Edinburgh. Finally won his case after a lot of legal jiggery-pokery and all sorts of things going on. Died penniless and an alcoholic. Spoilers there, but never mind. And it's a tremendous story, and it's one that I'm particularly proud of. I love that story.
It's a good story.
Yeah.
It was Sarah Eckford who said that you miss everything.
They know me so well.
But she was happy for Caro to take the credit. Apparently. Andrew from Nottingham says that his favourite film music is from The Life and Times of Lloyd George.
Oh, Chi Mai, which was Ennio Morricone. It was actually for an Italian film, but they used it on the TV series. And it's a great piece of music. Fascinating. Fabulous. Good choice.
So, other UK CBC favourite questions. What are your most memorable moments as an author?
I think whenever you see your book in the flesh, when you get this sent to you, for instance, whatever book it is, and you actually hold this physical copy in your hands, that's always memorable. Doesn't matter how many, in my case, it doesn't matter how many you've had published. It's still a thrill to actually hold the physical copy and just go through it and think, they're all my words, apart from the ones that I've stolen from some other people, but they're all my words. And, there's a tremendous sense of pride in seeing that. And also when if you stop at a page, as I've just done, and you look at it and you read it and you think, did I actually write that? And it's similarly when I heard the first audiobook that I had, which was Thunder Bay, and when I heard the narration by Sarah Barron and listened to the opening of it, and I thought, I didn't write that. That sounds so good. That couldn't have been me. Has Sarah changed it? And it's just because, when you get a good narrator and they do it so well, that you get this kind of out of body experience, if you like, where you think somebody else must have written that, because that actually sounds quite good. And I don't like saying it sounds quite good, because I'm always quite self-deprecating about my work. But when you hear somebody else doing it and you think, God, wish I could have written that. And those are the memorable moments. And that never, I don't think that never goes away, ever goes away. Certainly not for me. Maybe other people feel that it's just, ho hum, that's it. But for me, to open up that box, see your book in the flesh. And the next memorable moments is when you go into a bookshop and you see it on the shelf, or preferably on a table. That's a thrill as well. And that never gets old. It's great. And if you see somebody actually buying it, that's even better.
Have you ever seen someone reading one of your books, sort of out in the
wild?
And not tempted to say, I am the author?
Out in the wild. No, I don't think I ever have, actually. Spotted anybody. Not that I remember. I lived for many years out in the wilds of Scotland, so I wasn't on public transport very much. I had to drive everywhere, but I've moved now back to the city, and so I'm taking trains more often. So I kind of live in hope that I will look over my mask and see somebody reading a Rattle of Bones or one of the other ones. It would be great to see that, but no, I've never experienced that.
Would you own yourself up? Would you be like,
no, good grief, no. I couldn't do that. I'd be too embarrassed to do that.
What did you do to launch a Rattle of Bones? What was?
Well, these are strange times. We recorded an audio podcast. I was interviewed by a journalist called Jane Hamilton about it, so we put that out, and lots of social media stuff going on, and here tonight, in fact, this is to my mind, this is part of the launch. This is a big part of the launch, although it's been out for a couple of weeks, so that sort of thing. It's strange times, not being able to do anything in person, live, so to speak.
No, it's good that it's starting to open up again, isn't it? But
yeah,
it still feels weird doing stuff.
Yeah.
Sam asks, who have you not met in real life yet, but have spent time with virtually?
So many people. Have I met Carol Ramsey in real life? I don't know if I've met Carol Ramsey. Does Carol Ramsey exist? I can't think, because I've done a fair amount of digital stuff, but I can't think who I've not met in real life. Sorry about that.
My answer to that until about 2 weeks ago, probably not even that, would have been Sam.
All right.
Like, we've done this, the author chat things and all the organisations together.
Yeah.
And never met in real life until August.
Well, I've never met you in real life.
No.
And never met your father. Although I've chatted with him on Messenger, usually pleading for some sort of coverage. But yeah, I mean, people like yourself, I've never met, but authors I can't think who I've interviewed or been on a panel with who I've never actually met.
Steve said, who are your favourite Crimewriters books?
That's always a dangerous question. Who's on? Who's listening to us and watching us?
I'm guessing Caro, because she said she's a big fan of Letitia Loverbod.
Yeah, Carol Ramsey as well. I have so many. I mean, obviously, I'm a great admirer of Caro's work. He lied. No, I do like I like Caro. Denzel Myrick, Michael J. Malone, Neil Broadfoot, Teresa Talbot, all the people I've mentioned, Martin Leggett, Gordon Brown. But my favourites and the people who have influenced me are all American. So I mentioned Ed McBain earlier, and he was a huge influence on me, as was William Goldman, who was a screenwriter and a novelist. He wrote Marathon Man and various other thrillers, and these are absolutely incredible books. And his ability to fool you is just unsurpassed. I try to do it in a lot of ways, and I think I might do it with a Rattle of Bones, but he would call them reversals, and he would make you. He would be doing this with one hand and then doing that with the other. You just wouldn't see that going on. So William Goldman stuff I would always recommend. Of the more recent authors, Robert Crace has never let me down. I love Robert Crace's books, and Dennis Lehane's Kelsey and Gennaro books, and his standalone Mystic River is probably the most perfect crime book that I have ever read. So these are the guys that I still enjoy. But all my friends are wonderful. It says here.
Andrew's asked a really good question. He said, can you read any of the Rebecca series? And can you just start with any of them, or does he have to start with number one?
You can. I would always advise starting with Thunder Bay, but yes, you can, because anything that you need to know, I do fill in the subsequent books. Hopefully, I've done that, and a couple of reviewers have commented in that and said that you don't need to have read the first two because anything you need to know is filled in. But I would recommend that you start with Thunder Bay, and in fact buy all three at the same time. Not that I'm mercenary in any way, but that's the way it is.
That's good advice. Steve has said, any new discoveries this year?
In writers?
Mm-hmm.
No, I haven't discovered anybody this year. I've been reading a lot of people that I've read before for various reasons. So I've not actually picked up a new one, a new author. I don't think that I would recommend.
I've read lots of new authors recently that I would recommend.
Well, you're probably reading a lot more than me. So because of what you do. Whereas I'll be doing some research. There was a long period when I was doing research for something that I've written on spec, which is with my agent now, and will hopefully be heading out to publishers pretty soon. So there was a lot of research, a lot of reading going into that to be able to write it.
One of my new discoveries recently is a guy called Douglas Skelton.
He's great, I hear. I've heard he's absolutely wonderful. From many sources, I've heard this.
One of my favourite questions is, would you make a graphic novel of one of your books?
I wouldn't know how. It's not the way I think. Somebody else, I think, would need to come along and do it. I really wouldn't. It's not the way my mind goes. Is visually. So it would need to be somebody else who came along and said, right, I'll work on this for you.
So with your love of movies and movie music, have you ever cast like the Rebecca Connolly series?
You always do. You always play sort of fantasy casting in a way. At one point, I think it's in next year's book, I say that Karen Gillan would be ideal for Rebecca. There's no reason for that. I think that was a very arbitrary thing because it's the way the conversation goes in the book, and that somebody's talking about this, and one character says, "No, I always see Karen Gillan as being Rebecca," and you do tend to think about it, but in the end, you have to be careful because you are creating characters, and if you think about it too much, it really is just idle speculation when you do it. If you think about it too much, you would then start imprinting sort of the characteristics of that performer on the character, and I think that would be a bad idea. Your characters have to come from you, they have to be part of you, and they have to be your creation and not somebody else's.
Patsy said she can see Davy McCall as a graphic novel.
Yeah, maybe they could. Maybe they could, but as I say, somebody else would need to come along and do it for me, because I don't think I have that. That's not my skill set to think about the visuals. Although I do write, I like to think that I write visually. I think doing graphic novels, that's a particular skill set. That's a particular talent that somebody has that we don't all have.
Another one of Sam's favourite questions that she likes to ask authors is, have you ever acted out a scene?
Yes. Quite often I will read the scenes out loud because I want to hear the rhythms of the dialogue. I want to hear how it sounds. You also pick up a lot of repetition when you read the text out loud, and you realise that you've used the same words, 2 lines above, and you can catch it there because for some reason you might not see it on the page, but you will hear it as you're reading it. But also particularly for the dialogue, just to see how it works, to see how it all interlinks and connects, and to try and get the rhythms to make sure that it doesn't appear stilted. That doesn't mean that I've not written stilted dialogue. I'm sure people will say, oh, that bit there was pretty stilted. Of course that will happen. But I like to think that reading it out loud does help.
Sarah Eckford has said she's picked up books from authors she's never read before but hasn't got around to reading them.
Yeah, I'm sure she'll have piles and piles of books. Sarah will be buying them all the time, as a lot of your members will be doing, because I see it on the page when they talk about their TBR list, and they've bought another 50 or 60 books to sit about waiting for them to get around to.
Oh, don't know I do that. I've seriously got massive piles of books everywhere.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare. I may read them at some point.
Yeah, I have books all over the place, and quite a few of them I've just not got around to reading, because there's always something else. Somebody will say, can you read this for me? Or I'm chairing a panel, or I'm part of a panel, or I'm doing something, and you've got to, you do the reading for that. So, I mean, I can't remember the last book. In fact, the last book that I read that I just said, no, I'm just going to read this. Not because I know the person, or because I've got to do it because I'm going to be asking them questions, or I'm going to be meeting them, or whatever. The last book I read for me was a Robert Crace, and that would have been last year sometime.
So who's on your Bloody Scotland panel that you're interviewing?
Well, as soon as I mentioned it, I knew you were going to ask me that. James Oswald, Neil Lancaster, Marion Todd, and Margaret Kirk. And it's all about the police procedural. And that's on the Friday night in Bloody Scotland. I can't remember the time. I think 8:30, but I could be wrong.
Is it live or just a digital one?
It will be live, and digital. I think it's both. We will be live and coming at you from the stage in the Golden Lion in Stirling, but I think it's also going to be broadcast out there on the digital platforms at the same time.
That sounds like a nice collection of authors to be interviewing, though.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. It'll be good. They're all good.
We've got about 5 minutes left.
Okay. Do you want me to sing and dance? Is that?
Have you had enough whiskey for a song and dance? Is this
when we do the duet, the soft shoe shuffle to finish off the show?
Oh God, no! You don't want to hear me sing. Patricia's saying she wishes she could be at your event, but it's a 2-day journey.
Yeah. It's but as I say, I'm fairly certain it's also digital. Check the Bloody Scotland website for that. I'm sure somebody will correct it. So you may be able to watch it digitally.
Patsy wants you to put the tea cozy on.
The tea cozy. Hang on a minute.
Have you got the tea cozy?
Oh yes. Hang on. There we are.
Oh, look at that, and it's signed.
Oh yes, we all signed it. We all signed it. So there's the tea cozy. The tea cozy is always in evidence. It's always here. Can't do a show without the tea cozy.
I believe you've been on with us and not had the tea cozy.
Have I?
You may have been.
All right. I don't remember.
Or maybe you all had hats.
Oh, we all have hats. I would have the tea cozy. I think when we do the digital, because I am the keeper of the cozy. So when we do the digital events, I'll have the cozy, but the other guys will have different hats on. So that's probably what you're thinking about.
Oh wow! Sorry, since you put the tea cozy on, the side is going mad. I can't read what everyone said. We should have done that one before. Sam has absolutely loved the chat. She said. But she does say you have been on once without the tea cozy. Someone else had it, and she forgets who and why.
Did I? Okay. Well, that's just not on. That's just shocking. That must have been a disaster, that event without the tea cozy.
It was brilliant. And she's ridiculously excited about the fact we swap hosts when we invite people back. So if you return to us, she's very excited about the fact that she will get to interview you.
Well, I'm looking forward to Sam interviewing me as well.
Sam's a much better interviewer.
And I hope, no, don't be silly. And I hope you will have me back.
We definitely will have you back. I think that was a foregone conclusion. She was saying that she was very happy that she gets you next time. So finishes off with some plugs. Show us off the books again. Make sure people go and buy them.
A Rattle of Bones, that's the one that's out just now. You can see The Blood is Still just behind me. And bear with me. Thunder Bay is the first one. All still available. And The Rattle of Bones will be out in audio, I think, from next week as well, for those who prefer the old audiobooks.
Is there like a preferred store or place that you sell your books from where people can order a soft copy?
You can get them wherever suits you. They're available on Amazon, Waterstones, from Polygon's website direct as well, and bookshop.org, Blackwell's Book Depository, anywhere that good books are sold, and you'll find them. And I hope you will. I never like to push one particular outlet because I don't think it's fair. So anywhere that you like to get your books from, you should find it there.
Excellent. Steve would like you to put the link to your film broadcast in the group.
Right. Okay. I'll do that. But it's southernsound.org.uk. And the show goes out every Saturday at 4 p.m. UK time, because I think Steve's in the US of A, isn't he?
He's in California.
So it goes out at 4 p.m. here, at whatever time that is in California. But if, with your permission, tomorrow I will put the link onto the Crime Book page, if that's all right.
Yeah, you've totally got my permission to do that. He's asked for it as well, and he said thanks for the great interview.
Thank you for the great interview, and thanks to everybody for tuning in and asking questions. And I couldn't see what you were typing because I haven't got my glasses on, so I had to rely on Caroline to keep me right.
It has gone so fast, honestly. Like, the comments are just scrolling up the side at times.
Do you know, Caroline, women say that to me all the time, and I just
Steve has said you've got a new fan in him.
Oh, that's great. Thanks very much, Steve.
So you've done well there.
Yep. No, it was great. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
We've enjoyed having you on, and you're more than welcome back anytime.
And thanks very much for having me.